Shalom! We just flew back from Israel, literally, all the way back via Warsaw, Poland. So we took the circuitous route around the world. Today, we're going to talk about your resume, because your resume sucks. I hate to tell you this, but it does. I mean, I've looked at lots and lots of resumes, and they suck. So we're going to talk about how to do your resume for cyber when we come back with Russ on Secure Digital Life.
This is a Security Weekly production.
Welcome to Secure Digital Life. And you type in AAA porn or whatever it is you're typing in. I'm sorry. I was at a PG show.
And I'm really excited to be here.
I'm glad you're here because somebody needs to know what's going on.
That's right.
Okay, so
now somebody has to drink this.
I think it's another day. It's another episode.
Yeah, he's looking at the wrong camera.
Oh, you put my camera over here. Cut. Basically, forget you ever saw that. I think actually forgetting you ever saw that would really be a good idea at this point.
Today we're going to talk about resume versus CV. What we need to do. I know it sounds a little bit boring, but it's not. It's going to be fun because one of the biggest questions that Doug and I get, one of the biggest questions that we get is, how do I know that my resume is good? I'm looking for a new job. I've been in the field for 20 years at the same company. I need to know that I have the potential to be hired, and that document, that resume, that CV, that process of hiring is what we're going to cover for this show. So, Doug, you've heard a lot about this thing, resume and CV, right? When we say resume or CV, what do you see more often in the field, resumes or CVs that HR people want? Simon?
Well, honestly, until I ask you about it. Positions that I recruit people for when my company gets hired to do recruiting, I'm normally looking at resumes based on what you told me, which was that a resume was, a lot of entry level, a lot of stuff like that. You're going to see a sort of basic kind of thing.
Yeah, and that's absolutely right. A resume is basically that's great, awesome, thank you, thanks. Oh no,
there it went again.
Yeah. So a resume is basically a shorter version of a CV. A resume conforms to the typical rules that you may have heard in the past, it being 1 to 2 pages, lightweight. You don't really get into much, extraneous detail. You go back only so far as the jobs that you've held relating to the career that you're looking for, stuff like that. But we're going to get into all the nuts and bolts. But I just wanted to talk briefly about what the difference between the two are. Most of the people on this show are going to be looking for or looking to build up their resume. CV comes later on for those upper level C-suites or director or types of.
Well, let me put it this way: if you can't speak Latin, you don't need a CV. Let's put it like that. I mean, if you're thinking, should I put my resume in Latin or in French? You probably might be thinking about curricula vitae, but normally for most people, you would be doing a resume, which is a pretty, to me, a brief document.
Yeah. Agreed. And so, since we're going to focus on resumes right now, one thing I do want to say is always make sure you do whatever the job description tells you. So if a job description tells you you need to submit either a resume or CV, which many do, they give you the option. That's fine. A resume. If it tells you that you need a CV, well, that'll be another show. But we're going to talk about the resume, which most of the...
I don't think I've ever seen one that said CV on it.
Usually academic positions.
And I've applied for some academic positions, but I don't think I've ever seen one.
Yeah, so we're operating under the assumption that you're going to need a resume because that's what we believe and we feel that that's the right thing. So what are the different parts of a professional, successful resume? And what are the things that you need to do? And so there are 3 basic things, maybe 4. You want to be clear when you're writing your resume. You want to be concise, and you want to be consistent. Those 3 things, and you're going to see those 3 principles weaved in are woven in throughout. What
Can I add one?
Yeah, please do.
I want to add accurate.
Yep.
Because I have fired people. I mean, as a consultant, I have literally fired people before for inaccuracies in their resume because we audited those resumes and went out and said, why did you say you have an MBA from Harvard and you didn't have an MBA from Harvard? And the person was like, oh, I went to a seminar. So get that accuracy down because they may audit your resume even in the hiring process. And if they catch you doing things you weren't supposed to do, guess what? You're going to not only not get the job, but if you got the job, you may actually not get the job retroactively, which is a fancy way of saying you're fired.
Mm-hmm. And in some jobs, I've also seen you have to sign a thing at the end saying, to the best of my ability, this information is accurate. So.
Well, you probably signed that whether you know it or not. So in that giant packet of documents you signed that from HR that you didn't read, like when you sign you click that little thing that says I agree on your iPhone, and you end up part of the human centipede.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
As long as I'm the first piece or the segment, that's fine. But
well, I stole that from South Park, so that's
So 4 things: be clear, be consistent, be concise, and be accurate.
Yes.
Those 4 things. Now let's start with the most basic and rudimentary of resume building, and that is formatting. And how should I format my resume? Because that's really important. In formatting, Doug and I kind of agree on some of the similarities here. A 10 to 12 point font is a pretty standard font size. Yeah. Use the same font throughout the entire resume. Don't use Comic Sans and don't use Sanskrit or chisel, emboss,
cursive.
Yeah, no. Don't use fun fonts. Be part of that clear and conciseness that you want to the theme for the resume. You really want to make sure that even is embodied in your choice of font selections. And Times New Roman, Arial is just fine. The HR and other people aren't going to be looking at the resume and say, oh, look, he used script font.
Well, here's words to remember from Doug about resumes, who has reviewed thousands and thousands of resumes. If you can do no good, at least do no harm. Yeah. Because you can only hurt yourself doing weird things. And I know that there's people that argue about things being catchy. So somebody will say, I want to do something that gets people's attention. And I'm like, the problem with that is you don't know what gets people's attention in a good way. I mean, you can jump up and down in the street and take off all your clothes, and that will get people's attention, but it probably won't get you the job. And the same thing happens with these horrid fonts. And people, and your taste, I'm going to tell you another thing. I told you your resume sucked. Your taste sucks. I hate to tell you this, but your taste also sucks. You think you're clever, and you think you're witty, and you think you have great taste, and then you go out and get your resume done in gold foil, and all that does is get you not the job, which is the opposite of what your resume should do. So don't get carried away with
or
this
perfume-smelling paper.
Oh, yeah, I've had that before, too.
Next up, lipstick on the envelope.
Dipping in Drac or Noir before you send it in. Not a good idea.
Please don't do that. Nobody wants that.
Frankincense and myrrh, not a good thing.
Unless you're the son of God and you're being born.
Well, next time a little lighter on the frankincense, please. So,
all right. So once you create, just having a little technical stuff. Once you create your resume at the 10 to 12 point single font style format, what do you do with it then? You want to make sure that you create 2 different types of files, of saves. One is a PDF, and one would be a straight-up text document. And the reason for both, and why we didn't mention Word, you can write it in Word, that's fine, but make sure you save it as a Word document so you can edit it later. But when you save a copy for use or for sending, always send in PDF or text, depending on what the thing. And the reason for the 2 different versions is PDF stands for portable document format, and what that means is that PDF file looks the same no matter what device you're looking at it on. So if I'm looking at a PDF on my phone, it's the same file that I'm looking at as I look at it on my computer, and it preserves the author's intent and design and composition. Whereas if you look at it, if I open up a Word document on my Mac, and I don't have that font installed, it's going to substitute a font, and vice versa for Windows machine. So it may substitute Comic Sans for so God forbid that happens. But anyway, point being is just make sure that when you're sending a resume in an email, send it as a PDF. And another thing is because we're teaching, or we're having a podcast on cybersecurity. When Word allows macros, whereas PDF doesn't. So,
and a lot of companies filter Word documents. So if you send me a Word document, my company may actually filter that attachment because it was a Word document, which is very easily polluted by horrific things. Right. So, and we're all supposed to be technical people here. If you're applying for jobs in the art world, maybe they're going to put up with it. But here, I'm looking at this person I'm looking at for a cybersecurity job, and they don't know how to create a PDF. Really, they don't know how to create a text file. Really, that's already strikes 1 and 2 against your resume right there. So, and you're going to almost have to submit it electronically without a doubt.
So which brings us to electronic submission and why the text file. And so the text file is so that you can copy and paste. And the reason you would copy and paste is a lot of these HR or a lot of these companies now, their HR departments use these content management systems. I can't think of the name off the top of my. Cornerstone is one of them. Cornerstone is a big one. And so what happens is they create a job in Cornerstone. That job is published to. Excuse me. That job is posted to a website for the company or for wherever. And then when you click on Apply Now, a text box comes up, and that text box gives you basic formatting. But what it's for is to copy your resume into that text box. Now, that text box, if you copy and paste from Word uses background XML formatting as of 2007. So when you're copying that text box recognizes. Sorry, it's got a little Hebrew on my tongue. And that text box recognizes that XML formatting because it's web-based, and then it starts screwing with a lot of the fonts and a lot of the text. So the best case scenario here is to take the raw text file that you've saved, copy that, and paste that in the text box, and then at the most, you'll have to maybe do a couple of line returns or carriage returns.
And check that over because despite me having to fight off the resistance of making dirty comments about a little Hebrew on my tongue, but sorry, that was like too easy. Oh, don't do it. But the text thing, I see that more and more, and a lot of times these text boxes are going to be space limited. They're going to be restrictive because they want to try to force you into their model. And if you do just drag over your Word stuff, it will be a giant mess. And I've seen these happen to me, and the people had a printed out copy that they'd gotten from the system where I'd pasted my Word document into the text box, and it was just all run together, and it was a giant mess. And the guy was like, "Wow, your resume sucks." And I was like, "Yes, it does. Hire me anyway. You will hire me." But I mean, at the end of the day, you need to be ready for these things, because when you get to that point of applying for jobs, you're not going to have a lot of time, or somebody calls you and they say, "Hey, send me a resume today." And that's why you need to have this stuff ready to go, because a lot of opportunities are going to pop up because you're at a party or you're at a meeting and somebody says, "Give me your card and send me a resume," and they would almost expect you to jump on your phone right then and have it ready to go. And I've had people that I said that to turned around and said, "Yeah, give me a couple of weeks to put a resume together. I'm going to try to assemble something." And you're like, "Oh, you don't have a resume?" And I know you're saying, "I'm a high school student. I'm an entry-level employee. I don't have a resume." I'm like, "You need a resume. Come on, put one together." That's why you're watching the show.
Yeah, exactly. And which brings us to the final point. After your formatting, after you've saved your PDF and your text file, what's the last thing you do? Review. Look at that resume before you click send on the box. And why?
Because your resume sucks.
That's right.
It sucks. I'm telling you. He didn't want me to say this because he's trying to be positive, and I was like, "No, your resume sucks. I've seen so many of them." And I'm going to tell you. I'm going to tell you right now. So I'm going to get really agitated. This is one of my things. And you guys know I'm always really, really calm about everything. But when I was doing a lot of resume reviews, we would sometimes have 600, 700 resumes, this big giant pile, and for programming jobs. And I literally have to find a way to get from 600 to, say, like 30 people we're going to talk to that want to come to this job fair. And I'm literally looking at them, and I'm going to spend a very brief period of time looking at your resume. So if it's 50 pages long, yeah, too much. I don't want to hire somebody for an entry-level job. It's got a 50-page resume. Really? I mean, you can't get a job? But when I look at your resume and I see that you misspelled the name of the company, when I look at your resume and I see that you misspelled the name of your university, because I knew the universities that people were applying from because we had the same group and we were doing a job fair for like six schools.
You have Hebrew on your tongue too.
Yeah, exactly. When I do that and I look at it and I see that you misspelled the name of the university that you attended. And I'm really good at spotting spelling errors. I hate to tell you that, but I am. Anybody who knows me took my forensics class and was left in tears at the end of it because I was all over it. But you won't see it, so you have to review it. You can't just glance over it. You're gonna have to review it, and then better get somebody else to look at your resume. Significant other, friend, enemy is even better. Have your worst enemy look at it, because basically that's somebody who's going to spot that thing where you screwed up. You don't know how to use commas. I promise you don't. And worse, Kurt Vonnegut always said that the only purpose for a semicolon was to prove that you'd been to college. He didn't like semicolons, and I love Kurt Vonnegut, so I respect anything that he said. But you don't know how to use semicolons. I assure you, you don't. None of us do. Semicolons are one of the great mysteries of the universe, and they will never be resolved in our lifetime. I mean, even Stephen Hawking, you go to Stephen Hawking and go, Stephen, semicolons? And he just goes, go F yourself, that kind of thing. But I mean, so you need somebody to proof your resume, because that's going to hurt you. And when I was going through them, anything like that, it's just boop, 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 boop. I'm like, oh, wow, misspelled my name, misspelled this name, and I'm like, come on, didn't even know the name of the job. You didn't put that up at the top or whatever.
And if you're unsure, or let's say you're like me and don't have any friends or people that will look at or that you trust to look over your resume, you can pay a resume writing service to do it for you, and they charge about $100 from start to finish. They'll have you come in, they'll interview you, they'll take copious amount. Well, the good ones do. They'll take copious amounts of notes. And then they'll spit out a final product, and they charge the good ones charge $75 to $100. So that's something to keep in the back of your mind. You can find those people.
But I mean, and that's nice. But you may not have $75, $100 while you're looking for a job.
Right.
Look, Word has a spell checker built into it. I'm sorry. Google Docs has a spell checker built into it. Facebook has a spell checker built into it. And all those fancy Word, all these things, they have grammar checkers too. It's flagging stuff. And it's actually, I get people send me Word document resumes, and all their errors are flagged on my screen. And I'm like, wow, you didn't wonder what that little blue line meant? You didn't wonder what that big nasty red line meant where you misspelled this over and over and over and over again in this document? I'm like, wow, really?
Yeah.
And you're just like, yeah, next. And I assure you, even in cyber, which is really popular right now, there will be more than one candidate for the job. And you may be awesome, and it gets down to, and I got down to my 30 people, and I'm going through it, and I'm going, I got to choose between this one, and this one. And I go, this guy right here is awesome, but, he really just doesn't know how to use semicolons and shouldn't. And this person has a really nice, concise resume. I'm like, I'm going to take this one because I got to pick somehow. And I picked the one that was going to be better. So take that time. It sucks. You don't want to do it. I don't want to do it either. Yep. I hate that crap. But you got to do it. And I'm terrible with my stuff, so I have to get my wife reads it, because my wife is very, she spots every little thing, and she's like, don't use semicolons. Remember what Kurt Vonnegut said. And so every time you start to use a semicolon, remember what Kurt Vonnegut said, and you will immediately get rid of that semicolon.
Awesome. So that sums up the intro. In the last 7 minutes of the show, let's go through the actual components.
Okay.
And then maybe in the subsequent week,
we may have to do another show on this. I'm going to rant about it so much.
Yeah.
It's never going to stop.
Yep. So first part of the resume should be your contact information. And Doug and I mostly agree on what's going on here, but we'll see. Ready? So here's what I feel. Should be your name. We won't talk about the address yet. Your name, your email address, which we'll get to momentarily, and I think a phone number.
Russ, you ignorant slut.
Yes, that's right, Jane. Now let's start with the email address, because the phone number is going to cause a little bit of a discussion here. The email address, Doug and I both agree, should be a professional email address. I'll give you an example in a minute, with a relevant and valid domain, from a relevant and valid domain. So, for instance, I may have Russell.Boschman, which is my full name, so I use the dot because chances are Russell Boschman is already taken, at gmail.com. Okay. Another valid and relevant email might be something along the lines of, Doug White or Douglas
That's
White.
Definitely taken.
Douglas White at gmail.com. So why am I a huge fan of Gmail? It's not that I'm a huge fan of Gmail. I like it. I think it's great. But it's very much like keeping in trend. You're applying for a job in IT. I mean, essentially in the IT sector, in the field, and working in IT and telling them that your email address is DougWhite@AOL.com, you become the office joke. You know what I mean?
Well, that's true.
Nobody's using that stuff anymore. That is antiquated garbage. If you're still using AOL email address on your for your job searching, then you're probably not going to get hired.
Yahoo.
Or Yahoo's another one. MSN maybe. But try to go with Gmail.
Well, I will tell you that you can go join the Association for Computing Machinery, and they will let you use their domain. It's just forwarding, so you can forward it then
That's
to
it. You can forward to your email.
to dwight@tentacleporn.com, and they won't see that unless you reply.
Yeah.
But I mean, you can use that forwarder, and everybody pretty much knows what acm.org is.
Yep.
But you can get Gmails. You can get an extra Gmail that you don't normally use because your usual address is Big Daddy or whatever.
Big Pimpin at gmail.com.
Russ Ice Pick Boscheman or whatever.
God.
But I mean, if people do that, and that's one of those little subtle things that can hurt you. Again, do no harm. So throwing up something really strange as and maybe that you have used that email your whole life. Go get a forwarder at ACM. You can do that. You have to join ACM, but that's not a bad thing. But there's free forwarders too. But and the other piece of that is getting weird, obscure stuff. A lot of times it'll get filtered, so it may your submission may actually get dumped in people's junk folder because it's coming from a really questionable domain like Well of Chaos or something.
Yeah.
And they go, wow, that's a known hacking site. There used to be one called blackcode.com that people use for email addresses, and it was just filtered by everyone. So you have to be careful about that. And remember, separating it is good too.
Yep.
And we talked about that when we were arguing about some of this stuff. But separating this as a separate email just for your job search is not a bad idea, because that way you know how to behave.
Yeah.
And when stuff comes in on that account, which you have to check, but when it comes in that account, you know it's job search related, and you can be a little more cautious, and it gives you an extra layer of thought before you dash off a quick reply or you accidentally reply to a job search person. When I emailed you and said, hey, we're interested in you, we'd like to interview you, and you accidentally hit send the reply you were sending to your friends going, hey man, let's go smoke a bow, or whatever kind of thing you're doing that you shouldn't be doing and that the company doesn't want to know about, and you accidentally reply to me on that, and that would be really, really bad.
Which brings us to the other two pieces of information that could potentially, conceivably go into contact information header, and that is your phone number and address.
Yeah. And
Doug and I went back and forth. He actually ended up convincing me in the long run, even though I didn't tell him that P.O. Box might be the way to go. And to open a P.O. box, what did you say? It was $60 a year?
It's not even that much. It's
30?
Maybe $30 for 6 months or something like that. But remember, we also talked about if you're a student in a university, a lot of universities have P.O. boxes you can register for like very, very cheap or free. Even like when I went to school, you could get one for free, or they gave you one, and most people didn't even know they had it. But you can go to any post office, and I know this is old school crap, but you're applying for jobs, and a lot of it's going to be old school crap, and you're going to have to deal with it. You can go down to the post office, like whichever one's convenient to you, and register, and they will give you one of those little metal boxes with a key, and you can use that as your resume. Tell them why I was arguing in favor of this.
In favor of the P.O. box?
Yeah.
I think it was because, for security reasons, number one.
Well, yeah.
I mean, we're a show about cybersecurity, and I mean, a lot of people are using Indeed or Monster or these resume collecting agencies to find out personalized information for individuals to potentially hack them. And what else?
So I was talking about how you're getting ready to send out a bunch of personal information to who knows whom, and it's going to be distributed across who knows whom.
Yep.
And the problem you're going to have with that is that you put your home address on there. And I mean, I hate to be like this, but there are people in the world that are not very good people. And we have seen several cases where someone was taking resume information and then calling people and saying, hey, I got your resume, and I was wondering if you'd like to have dinner with me sometime. And you go, what?
Creepy.
I mean, this person I was talking to said that this happened to her at this company, and it was a person had called her at home with her resume information and said, hey, would you like to have dinner with me? And he knew where she lived.
Yep.
And I don't like giving that information out, and it's so easy to get a P.O. box. And plus, there's the other reason. It compartmentalizes your job search. put your job search in this nice fancy box that you check, and with your email, with your snail mail, and just keep it separate so that you know that this is decorum over here. This is my life you're talking about, and I don't want to mix it up with all the junk mail I get in a mailbox. So I'm going to keep it all this nice, and this is a nice little compartment box that I can deal with it in that context.
And which so PO box definitely way to go. Using your if you're a student or a grad student, using your university mail system might be good as well. Which brings us to phone number.
Yeah.
And Doug and I spent probably 30 minutes just talking about this. Google phone numbers now are free, and they're super useful. And creating a look, I'm not here to judge the way that you answer. Actually, I am. I've got so many people that my students, when I call them, they answer, "Yo, what up, dog?" Or like, some
I've
stupid
never called
crap.
anybody who said, "Go for Papa Palpatine."
Oh man,
that's my favorite.
Yeah, Fat Daddy, who it is, some stuff like that. So you want to make sure that you're distinguishing people who are calling you who are friends, who you may speak that way to, which is no judgment on my part. But if I'm a potential employer, I don't want to hear you answer the phone. Yo, Fat Daddy, who this? That's not the way that I want to be.
And my perspective on it was from. I agree with that 100%. It was also one, you don't know when you shouldn't answer the phone.
Right.
Don't answer the phone at a club where there's a party going on in the background and people are screaming and people are going, "Chug it, man!" That kind of stuff. Take it off. That kind of stuff.
I'm so high right now.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, you don't. I mean, and you think, gee, guys, you're being a little bit picky. But I'm like, that's that one little thing that I call you, that I'm calling you, and it's 8 o'clock at night because I'm still at work.
Yeah, and you're at the club.
And you're at the club, and I call you, or you're at a party at whatever. And literally, you're like, hang on, guys, hang on. This is this guy calling about the job. And if it's coming on that one number, it's for job search. You can either let it go to voicemail, where you've got a nice professional voicemail message recorded instead of your usual voicemail. And you can let it go to voicemail because you go, it's 8 o'clock at night. Yep. I'm not going to take this. I'll go call the guy back out. I'm going to go get in my car and call the guy back. Because I would like you to call me back to show that you're available at 8 o'clock at night. But I don't want you to pick up at the club. And then literally in the background, somebody's going, "Oh, man, I just puked and I am so high." And I mean, literally that one little thing. And you think that doesn't matter. But that one little thing that I just heard. And I'm going, wow, I'm calling 20 people. And I just got this guy who looked okay, but apparently the guy is out drinking at 8 o'clock at night when they should be programming. Yeah. And I know you don't live like that. None of us do, but with the illusion
you should be drinking while you're programming.
Right,
Come on,
exactly.
like the rest of us.
But I mean, the point is that one little thing, maybe that one tick that keeps you from getting the job you really wanted, and that other person getting the job that you really wanted, because I called them and they said, "Hello. Good evening, this is Doug White." And instead of like, "Yo, man, what is it?" Because you thought it was your friend or you saw the number. So getting calls on that number is better, and it's so easy to do.
Yeah, now. on the Google phone number, that's good. It's free and it goes right to your cell phone.
Vonage.
Yeah, Vonage is another one. VoIP. Or if you want to spend $30, go buy a burner.
Well, you can do that too. I mean, then you have to kind of keep up with 2 phones or whatever. But
that's true.
It's so easy to set up free. I'm just trying to keep people's costs down. But it's so easy to set up a free phone number that you can use just for this purpose. Plus, then if you get creepy guy's calling that number all the time, going, "Hi,
hey.
I was thinking about you again."
Is your hair chemically treated?
Yeah. Are any of the people on the sex? I saw another one of those ads for sex dolls. They were interviewing a guy, and I'm like, I'm sorry, but I was like going. Every one of these guys, I'm sorry, guys, if you're out there, it was creepy.
So, all right. Bottom line is, we got to the professional state.
We'll do that. We're going to do another show because this took longer than we thought.
Next week, what we'll do while we're focusing on this, what we want you to do as a sort of not homework, but an exercise. Think about a professional statement, a one sentence sort of about you that summarizes where you are, where you've been, and where you want to go, and think about how you want to phrase that. Again, one sentence. That's going to be the next phase of the resume.
And it's hard to do. It's very difficult to think about that about yourself, at least for me.
And in one sentence.
And you have to be clear and concise, and you have to be brief. Because remember, none of us are going to read past about halfway down the page. And so
6 seconds.
If you think that the good parts are on page 3 or even at the bottom, I may not have even seen that because I got bored so fast. Because my attention span's like a gnat.
Yep. And you have 300 of these things.
And
to
I've
look
got
through.
300 to glance through, and so I'm quickly throwing them in the trash. And I know I probably missed some good candidates because of that, because they had all that really good stuff down at the bottom. But don't bury the lead. Put it at the top. You know, you got to sell it. But we want to talk about the content of your resume next time. Today, we're just talking about trying to get started with this because it's a big process. And if you don't have a resume, or if you have one, because your resume sucks. Did I say that before? I'll say it again. Your resume sucks. But next time we'll talk about why it sucks even more than you thought it did, and even more than I thought it did. So be sure and catch us next week. We will talk about the content of your horrible resume. Okay? Thanks for watching.